Good morning, everyone. For those who I didn't see this morning, as Martin said, I'm Adrian Littlewood. I've been CEO since late last year. It's very exciting to be here. This is my first TRENZ as CEO. I have been here in my other capacity, but it's great to see so many familiar faces here today. So listen, what I want to talk to you today is a little bit about high opportunity markets, which we're calling hot markets. We would have heard a bit about that already in some of the previous presentations, but I wanted to expand a little bit on that. I also wanted to talk to you also about how we're working with influencers to shape markets, because I think it's really important that we understand who controls the tap, if you like, in overseas markets and source markets, and that's very important for us. And then also, lastly, I wanted to talk about how we're continuing to drive growth for the future through working with those influencers. So I'll kick it off. So listen, what's a high opportunity market? It won't be a surprise to any of you who have been in the tourism market for some time that the growth is coming from new markets that have traditionally not been high sources of growth. Our markets have traditionally, source markets have been often in Europe and other areas like that. But the good news is that the growth is coming to our part of the world, and it's only one air length away rather than being a two-hop to some of those big markets. So what we've called high opportunity markets are those markets like Indonesia, obviously like China, Philippines, Malaysia, those markets that are genuinely growing. And there's no doubt why that growth is occurring in tourism, and that's simply because their domestic economies are strong and growing. Added to that, they are incredibly confident consumers. In this survey from Nielsen late last year, you can see that of those top countries, 6 of the top are from those high opportunity markets. So it makes sense to focus on those markets in a strong way. You can obviously see Greece, as a small example, we know very well, is probably low in confidence at 35 on their index, so they've got a bit of work to do over the next little while. And look, these presentations sometimes run the risk of being a China theme to everything. But I wanted to touch on this for a small bit. China has been a significant change for us, for New Zealand, and I think that's been a fantastic story. We've had about 17% growth since 2008, and that's been outstanding year over year. And a large part of that has been direct capacity growth. Christopher talked about the change in Air New Zealand and Shanghai, and Martin talked about the change for China Southern coming in the last couple of years. That has made a significant difference to that market, and that's delivering new value to this country, and we think that's outstanding. And look, this is sometimes not well understood, and if you can spot this chart, if you look at the dotted line there, New Zealand has actually done relatively well in this market. In 1999, New Zealand was awarded approved destination status by the Chinese government. Incredibly important. It unlocked New Zealand as a travel destination at the same time as Australia got that growth, that opportunity. And so New Zealand has relatively, against this index that I've shown here, performed very, very well. You will see, however, we've started to slide back and other markets have improved suddenly. So you can see some real change going on in the later years where markets like Thailand have really grown significantly, whereas others have struggled. And you can see Japan has dipped off in the last little while. So it's incredibly important that while we think we're doing a great job, we always need to measure ourselves on a relative basis because we are competing against source destination markets around the world. So we've done really, really well. But I think there's a lesson and a risk to be mindful of in this growth. I think the Korean market sort of paints a little picture of how it can go the other way, where you've had great success and it can turn against you. And I wanted to share this little story with you. So back in 2002, we were doing pretty well for Korean tourists in New Zealand. Australia was generating about 189,000, you can see in the yellow bars there, tourists into Australia, and New Zealand was doing relatively very well, 109,000. Well, what's unfolded since that time has been a real change. And over that period, Korean outbound travel has grown significantly, and in fact, in 2012, the Korean market had its highest ever year for outbound growth. Now, Australia has done modestly well. They've grown 3.5% compound over that time, total over that time. But New Zealand has declined 57% in that period, and that's a really significant change. And I think this is a really important point that I'd like to make, that I think the industry understands now, but I think it's important we note for the future in our future markets, is that the market in Korea turned off New Zealand. They basically, some changes happened in the tour market in New Zealand. Some of the subsidies disappeared, some of the agents went bankrupt, and that tap just turned off. and suddenly the tourists stopped coming to New Zealand. Now, whether you think they might have been high value or modest value tourists, the point is the market turned off and New Zealand didn't respond. So whereas I think now we would look at that differently and say, okay, we need to respond differently. We need to look at where the opportunity markets are in Korea and reinvest. What actually happened is the decline happened, air capacity was withdrawn, marketing investment slowed down because the capacity wasn't there, and then suddenly the whole thing went into a downward spiral. So I think we want to all be mindful of, as an industry, that these things can turn off very, very quickly if we aren't close to those who make the key decisions and drive those travel decisions in those source markets. So I think that's a really important point. On Friday, we updated what we called Ambition 2020, which was in 2012. We set an aspirational target that we thought New Zealand should be shooting for in terms of visitor growth. We said that was around 3.5 million in 2020. And we thought that was a good aspiration to shoot for. You know, it might take some real hard work to get there. This year we updated those numbers, and these are our numbers that we're providing back to the industry for consideration. We updated that, and we've increased that range from 3.5 to 4 million this year. And that's partly because of the things that this group and I've been talking about today, is that opportunity is there, it is real, and it's coming fast. So we've updated that to upside 4 million passengers, and that's a 1.5 million passenger arrival improvement on where we are today. So that's a really significant change that we need to shoot for. The thing is that the industry needs to deliver it. It's not going to be purely delivered by a whole chunk of new funding that's suddenly going to turn up on Kevin's door. He's trying to work out how best to apply. It needs to be delivered by the industry working together, and that's crucially important. The other point, though, is that again, back to my point about Korea, is that we need to do it knowing that other markets, that other countries are shooting for this growth at the same time. We are not alone in identifying these growth markets and trying to reorganise our business and our tourism industry to capture those markets. So we must work really, really hard as an industry to go after that growth. So that target of 4 million looks like a compound growth rate of about 6% through to 2020. So it's a pretty solid target to go for, but we think with a few things going our way, that's something we should all be aspiring to for the future. Just to give a bit more detail on where we think that growth will come from, no surprises that we think that'll come from high opportunity markets. So you can see here in this chart, and some of these numbers are coming off low base numbers, but India 130%, China 191%, South America 246%. So they are big growth opportunities. In absolute terms, though, obviously some of those big source markets still remain important. So, you know, Kevin mentioned Australia, still that growth of 500,000, hopefully there. China growth of 375,000 passengers, and you see also South America and India in there as well. So there's a lot of potential in there, and I'd encourage you, if you're interested in these numbers as part of the aspiration we're trying to set, ambition2020.co.nz, you can see some of that more information. And just to build a little bit more on that, the importance of core markets while we're focusing on growth, this chart sort of, it's a bit hard to see it with the light, but it sort of expands on where that growth will come from, how that growth will be divided up. So while Asia and these high opportunity markets will be high sources of growth, they'll still only represent about 40% of the total growth into New Zealand, we think. The still large part comes from those core markets, so we cannot turn off those core markets. We need to, as Kevin said, build on and rethink how we approach those markets to attract higher value customers. So I just thought I'd take this opportunity to talk a little bit more about how we have been working with those key influencers and agents in those source markets. We've been working with a range of operators and agencies and airlines across many, many different markets. And here's a couple of small examples that I wanted to talk to you about. We've been very much focusing on, I guess, three simple areas: Mono New Zealand. And on the left-hand side here, you can see some examples here where we've worked with a range of partners. This one, I think, is with ATED, Auckland Tourism and Economic Development, promoting Auckland into the China market with operator GZL in China. Down here, this is one we did ourselves with for Indonesia, using the celebrity Farah Quinn, very successful celebrity in Indonesia. In the middle here, we've been working on the free independent traveller market, also the semi-independent traveller market, and obviously that's a characteristic that's not surprising for tourists who are unfamiliar with a country or looking for a bit more support. We've been working with Korean Air in the top there, Tourism New Zealand as well, Thailand in the bottom one there, again with Tourism New Zealand, and we've also been working on value markets in India and Thailand. Again, working with a range of partners from national tourism organisations, regional tourism organisations, airlines and tour operators and the like. So we've really taken a pick and mix approach to really focus on what are the opportunity markets and segments that we see that need to be tested and worth going after. What we've done then is also to try and use our position to help the industry in New Zealand to create a bit of scale, to convert the interest that's being generated into conversion. So again, a couple of examples here, both in New Zealand and overseas. So in New Zealand, we've been developing a platform called Trip Guide. If you happen to not skip the TV1 news, you would have seen hopefully Trip Guide. And that's about helping airlines that are new into New Zealand or trying to promote a new route to tell their story to New Zealanders in a more effective way. So we've done promotions with people like Hawaiian, like Malaysia and China Southern to try and tell that story a bit more. We've also obviously been working in China, and we've extended our relationship with operators to build platforms like Luxury New Zealand, which is just telling a little bit more of a story around luxury markets and sharing that with customers in those source markets, and also adding a conversion engine on sites like New Zealand Journeys. And lastly, we've extended that Luxury New Zealand platform into other markets like Indonesia and India and Malaysia. And these have actually delivered results. Trip Guide over here on the left-hand side actually ended up being the strongest sales period for one of the airline that we worked for. It had 50% growth in their business class sales during that period. So incredibly important. It's something, again, that we can offer repeatably to our airline partners. Secondly, in the China example there, we saw very strong passenger growth in that period. Again, saw 50% growth in the premium class sales, which we were trying to support with the airline. So delivered great results. And in the Indonesian market, we've had very strong results again out of Indonesia, again building awareness and conversion in that market. So that's a little bit how we've been working with key influencers and agents in source markets. Next thing I wanted to just focus on was the fantastic announcements yesterday that Kevin touched upon. I think the Prime Minister's announcements yesterday about the increase in tourism funding and the targeting of tourism funding is just outstanding news. And again, I'd just like to acknowledge Kevin and his team and all the work they've done to gather that additional funding from the government. Incredibly exciting. I think the message there that goes with that is, the government can't on its own deliver it, and Tourism New Zealand can't on its own deliver it. I think we all need to work together, and I think Christopher and Martin have also alluded to that point. And I think also the industry needs to be willing to commit itself and its own resources to this new growth agenda. It can't just sit there and expect that the government and Tourism New Zealand will do all the work. So as part of our support for the industry, on Friday we announced 2 new marketing support and conversion support packages supporting operators who are trying to target high opportunity markets, and secondly $500,000 in support packages for those seasonal or tour charter operators looking to grow capacity into New Zealand. So that's part of a little bit of what we're doing to see if we can help the industry and help Kevin and the other parts of the industry to grow strongly. The other thing I'd like to announce today is a world-first partnership with Weibo in China. Now, Weibo, for those of you who know it, is a sort of a combination between Facebook and Twitter. Incredibly popular. About 500,000 users in China. They are very, very engaged with this product, about 90 minutes of use per day. And Weibo is fast shifting into social commerce, and that's partly why we've got involved with Weibo on this. So this is about, Weibo is building a new travel planner app, and we are working with them to try and draw our connections with agents into this app and to help users to really build itineraries, to discover new itineraries, share those travel itineraries with their friends and contacts, and importantly to then convert to a sale. And that's really important for us, is that the fantastic awareness that is built up around New Zealand is then converted into interest in itineraries and then is converted into sales. And this is really important for us. It also allows the industry and the partners that we work with to quickly test new ideas and segments, to work out what are the new segments that I might be able to test an idea in. And when we were all in China, we heard several examples from tour operators saying, well, look, I think there's a photography tour that I could put up. People who are interested in landscape photography, and I could take 50 high-value photographers around the country, and they will spend many, many weeks here all around the country taking photos of the wonderful New Zealand scenery. Someone else mentioned ocean fishing. Someone else mentioned obviously golf as a clear one. So there are ways that we can test using this capability to test out these new ideas, to test the appeal of those, and then quickly shape itineraries and convert. The way it's set up, it's allows wide partner participation or industry participation. We're happy to work with anyone to try and make this work, and we look forward to doing that with all of the panelists here today. And it's free. There's no cost to be involved in it. We just want to get the right itineraries in front of the right customers at the right time and convert to sale. And obviously, it will have because we have a strong interest in driving value, not just volume. It'll be targeting mono New Zealand travel and the free and independent travel and semi-independent travel markets for the future. So this is a fantastic evolution for us. It's a build on what we've been doing. It focuses on moving from attract to transact, and that's something we're trying to focus on. And I think, again, as Christopher said before, that there's a confluence of different things happening across the industry now. There's a confluence of excitement, and I think it's an incredibly exciting time to be part of the industry. And I have incredibly high hopes for us, and I think Ambition 2020 for us sort of sets out what we hope is possible for the country for the future. And I think the announcements today talk a little bit about how we think we can play our role to help the industry to grow into the future. Thank you very much.